Welcome to Around the Farm. I'm Steve Gregerson here with Andy Height, Site Director of the Johnston Farm and Indian Agency, and we want to take you around the farm today and give you some insights on what's happening today.
We're going to talk a little bit about upcoming events, but something we haven't done for a long time. And it is kind of around the farm. We've talked about the different time periods that this site has been touched by. And I thought today it might be kind of fun. We've got an exhibit here that I don't know whether people ever really pay much attention to it or notice it or not, but we call it Five Flags Over Piqua. And it talks about the different time periods and different events that have been here. So I thought maybe we'd just kind of do that today. It does kind of go around the farm because it starts on Pickawillany and then sort of goes around the farm. So I guess that kind of sticks with our theme or our title of our program, doesn't it?
It does.
It lets us stay inside where it's air conditioned.
That is definitely a help today because it's a little warm out there.
It's just starting to warm up a little bit, but the good thing is for 2 days we haven't had any rain.
That's also been a little unusual this summer.
And I wasn't aware that Ohio had a monsoon season until this summer. So, but anyway, that's what we'll, and then we'll come back, we'll finish up, and we'll talk about some upcoming events and some things that have been going on, and we'll start to go around the farm.
Sounds good to me.
One of the things that when we were redoing the museum, we were looking at empty spaces and things that we could maybe do something with. And one of the things that struck me is we had this wall back here that was empty. And I thought, well, why don't we do something about the different nations and events that have taken place visually? And so we came up with this that we call Five Flags Over Piqua. And it goes from being completely European, it goes from left to right, which makes sense. The first flag is the French fleur-de-lis. Then we have the British Red Ensign, the Betsy Ross flag, the Mexican War flag, the flag from the Star-Spangled Banner from the time of the War of 1812. Brain went dead there for a minute. And the last flag is the 34-star flag that would have been here during the Civil War, when the 94th and 110th were here. So these are the U.S. and foreign flags that really have some importance to this site. And I thought it might be kind of fun today to just kind of look at where all these events fit into the story of the Johnston Farm, and maybe help give people a little bit better appreciation of the scope of things that have happened here. So we'll kind of go from there.
Sounds like a good idea to me.
Well, let's start with the first flag.
That sounds like a good starting point, to say the least.
That makes sense, doesn't it? The first national flag that flew over this place of a European nation was the French fleur-de-lis. And if you think back, as the French were moving into North America, they controlled everything. The St. Lawrence River was their highway. And as they came in, of course, they developed the control of Canada. And also, they claimed all the land south to the Ohio River, west of the Appalachian Mountains. So where we are right now, in the early 1700s, was French territory. And so it makes sense that we would have the first flag that could have flown here, would have been the French fleur-de-lis. And even this part of Ohio, the French referred to this part of Ohio as Butorst County. So, they were familiar with it. Obviously, their traders were very active through here. And that was how the French controlled the land, by having the economic control over the Native American trade. And they felt like, they had a lock on that trade. And for a lot of years, they did. So, this would have been the first flag. And this flag would have been here in 1749 when Celeron de Bienville brought his expedition up the river to try to clear the English out of what they saw as French territory at that time. This would have been the flag that his forces would have flown as they came up. Because when the French saw what was happening with the British trade, they became just a little nervous. I mean, they were going to lose their land.
And the British were were doing better things than the French, according to history anyway, that they traded the better goods, the better quality stuff, and we're a little more equitable, I guess,
Yeah,
is the right word.
that's a good way. And to really appreciate that, you need to look at the period of time that this was, because this is in the era in world history, and I know all these world history people are just salivating at this. Oh, they're talking about world history today. This is the time period of the 100 Years' War, and that's the period of French and English struggles for world control. And one of the, the big prize out of all this, of course, is North America. And where all of this fits in here is if you can get the gateway to the Northwest Territory, you pretty well are going to control North America. Because you have the English on the eastern seaboard, you've got the Canadian, the French are in Canada. So the rest of the country is kind of up for grabs. And so this part of the world was sort of the key, sort of the gateway to the Northwest Territory. And you're exactly right. The French had traded with the natives for years and years, but what was starting to precipitate things, ooh, that was a big one.
A 50 center for sure.
Oh, yes.
On a Thursday morning.
Yeah, on a Thursday morning early. What precipitated all this was the fact that the British had shut down the mouth of the St. Lawrence River, and the French could no longer get goods easily into the Great Lakes area. So what you said earlier is exactly right. The quality of the French goods began to decline, the amount of the French goods declined, and the price was going up. And even at that point, even into the first quarter of the 1700s, the Indians were becoming, the native populations were becoming more and more dependent on European technology. And if they couldn't get it from the French, they were going to look at getting it from wherever they could get it. One of the things we talk about is human nature is human nature. If you go to a store and you get bad stuff, expensive, you don't go back. And that's what was happening. So this was the first nation that controlled this part of the country was the French. But as a result of the last of the French of the 100 Years' War, there were 4 world wars fought at that time. 3 of them started in Europe and spread to North America, and the last, what we refer to as the French and Indian War here, started in America and spread to Europe. And this was kind of the precipitation of it, was here, what we refer to as the Pickawillany Village, were the events that started here. And it all really here had to do with trade and supremacy of economic relations with the native population.
So when old Britain starts playing footsies with the British and inviting them in, and pretty much that really set up some red flags.
That's it, and it's really interesting. At least it's interesting to me. If you look at French colonial documents, when they get wind of the Brits at Pickawillany, they just go nuts. You're right. The red flags just go off, and they start to say, the British have to be eradicated at all costs. Then if you look at the English colonial documents, you see just the opposite, because they see what's happening. They see this chink now in the French trade system, and then they're saying we need to maintain our position at all costs. And it wasn't just Pickawillany. It was all the way down the Ohio River. They were starting to make incursions into the native trade. And that's where Saleron came in, because he brought a force down through western Pennsylvania, got onto the Ohio River, and followed that along and made stops in trying to eradicate the British as they made stops. He made a big deal about getting his force out of their boats and walking on shore and reclaiming the land for France, and tacking a proclamation on the trees and buried lead plates saying the same thing. And boy, that had so much impact on the native population. They dug up the lead plates and melted them down for bullets.
So they were very resourceful.
They were very resourceful. They got to Pickawillany, and he shared his message with old Britain, or Murmeskia, and he was told there, just go on back to where you came from, and we'll think about moving. So you're right. Starts to set the stage for what's going to happen. All right, so we have the French fleur-de-lis, we have the French presence here. You alluded to the fact that we had the British presence at Pickawillany, and on June 22nd of 1752, we had the French sort of instigated attack on Pickawillany that did eradicate the British influence for a while. Now, some people will make the claim that June 22nd, 1752 was the start of the French and Indian War. There's only two problems with that. There's no British troops here, and there's no French troops here. But it's the red flag that you were talking about, right, because it shows what's going to happen. These two European giants are going to butt heads in North America, and it's over the Indian trade. And you know, the French and Indian War officially began in Pennsylvania when Washington attacked the French force and got defeated and surrendered on the 4th of July, 1754. But ultimately, you know, the British came out victorious, won the 100 Years' War, and then the British Red Ensign would have been what would have been flown over this territory after the French and Indian War was 1763. Was the end of the French and Indian War. So you start to see the next nation that moves in is the British, and they control this area then until the Revolution. And so this becomes, you know, British territory. They get control of the Northwest Territory. They win North America. So they've won, you know, they basically won world dominance until you get Napoleon rattling around, you know, at the beginning of the 1800s, and you start to see this competition start all over again. I don't know that it ever really completely quit. You know, you always had the French and English, you know, kind of at loggerheads with each other. But you know, this was the next flag that we had here, and that prevailed again, as I said, until the Revolutionary War. And you know, at that time, there really wasn't. I've never seen much, and maybe you've seen some too. I've never seen much evidence of European settlement here after Pickawillany.
No, not really. I mean, you know, you look at Simon Kenton and some of those people that were already into the Ohio Valley and beginning to come in, and even though they prohibited and all that sort of thing, why, you know, they tend to be the colonists or eventually the Americans who are sneaking in and trying to see what's out here, because there was a lot of good stuff out here.
Yeah, so. Yeah. You're starting to see, I think too, you're starting to see a little bit of the, this is a little bit, oh shoot, my brain just went away. A little bit early to start talking about, you know, sea to sea, you know,
right.
Manifest Destiny. There we go.
There, good one.
But you know, I think that's what's starting. You know, they see, you know, they cross the Appalachians and they crest the Appalachian Mountains. They see all this land out here, and you know, it's just really enticing. Even though, you know, the British had imposed the proclamation of 1763 that you won't cross the crest of the Appalachian Mountains. Yeah, that didn't hold water.
Yeah.
And you started to get that incursion in here. So the second flag is a French flag.
British
flag. That's what I said. The second flag is a British flag, which followed the French flag. Right. There we go. And then the next move then, obviously, it would be where the colonists and the British then locked horns during the Revolutionary War. Of course, the next big event here is the American Revolution. And we have what's referred to as a Betsy Ross flag. Although I guess there's some question whether Betsy Ross really did that or not, but somebody had a good publicist, and
that's true.
And that became the story. But you know, this is associated with the American Revolution, and there wasn't a lot of Revolutionary War activity this far west. The one documented, of course, is 1782 when George Rogers Clark, you know, comes through this part of the country to try to quiet the native uprisings. And so I think it's appropriate that we talk about that we mention that this was the first American flag that would have flown over this part of the country, although I don't know that it ever did.
Yeah, this was certainly the prize out here, so to speak. I mean,
yeah.
Tempting.
Was this flag ever hoisted out here? I don't know.
Yeah, that's.
But this is the first American presence. When the Revolutionary War ends, the Treaty of Paris is signed, then this flag would have been the flag that could have flown here, which, likely when you start to see what the first settlement out here, 1795, 1796, likely that this flag would have been here by then.
Right.
So, now you see the third flag that would have been a part of our history out here. And, this flag's creation is a year after Johnston was born. Johnston was born in March of 1775 in Europe, in Ireland. And this flag would have been the first American flag that he would have been familiar with as he came to this country. So now we see the French flag first, we got the British red ensign, now the Betsy Ross flag. So that's 3 of the 5 flags, and all of these events have all been touched by this land if you include George Rogers Clark.
Right.
So you think about all that, that's a lot of history in a pretty short time. Now, as we move further into time, we'll move into the next flag, and we can start to talk about events that actually happened here. Okay, well, we move forward in time, and the next flag that you see there, that's the Star-Spangled Banner. You get the Betsy Ross flag, then the next one is the Star-Spangled Banner. This is a flag that was flown over Fort McHenry. This was a flag not this flag, but
I was going to say we've been to Baltimore and snatched it and brought it out here.
This is very, it's a little smaller and a lot better shape.
Well, actually, it's in Washington D.C. I guess,
yes.
Not in Baltimore.
But this was the Star-Spangled Banner that is associated then with the War of 1812, and that directly had that would have been here. This flag would have flown over this place. When you look at the Council of Piqua, which we've talked about before, and right. Talk about Harrison's army being here and things like that during the War of 1812, this flag very well would have been a flag that would have flown here. So people would have been familiar with this flag, and it's a little bit different. The stripes, there's more stripes on this than there were on the other flags. They were adding stripes as states came in at that time. So this is a little bit different configured flag. And of all of the flags we have hanging on the wall, that was the one that took the most time to find, believe it or not.
Really?
The flag vendors don't sell this one for some reason. So finally I got smart and said, you know what? I'll bet if I called Fort McHenry, they might have one. And so I called their gift shop. And, well, yeah, sure, we have them. How many dozen would you like? So no, I just want one. But when you look at that period of time, this was the first War of 1812. It's the first time you really start to get a nationalistic feeling. It really starts to blossom in America. So this would have been an important time here. And when you look at the Council of Piqua and the importance that had on the War of 1812, and you couple that with the fact that Harrison's army was camped where we are right now when he was appointed commander of the Western Forces, and you get all that stuff going on here, and this would have been a busy place. It would have been a little nervous place too, because of course after the Council of Piqua, the local story always was that Johnston had 10,000 Indians camped out here over the winter of 1812 and 1813, and that number is a little high.
Yeah, I would.
But there were natives camped here. During that winter, he had a fairly large camp of Delaware. And there were a couple reasons for that. The Delaware were close. They sort of bordered some of the Shawnee presence, and they were they were a little nervous because the Shawnee were siding with the British, and the Delaware had cast their lot with the Americans. And they really didn't want to go home. And the other thing, too, the council took place kind of during harvest season, and that summer had not been a good crop year. So there wasn't food to feed them for the winter. So they stayed here, and Johnston was responsible. And the people in Miami County were not pleased with the native presence here at that point. They just didn't feel too safe with Johnston having that large an Indian camp. Now I think I understand where the 10,000 number comes from. As he was preparing for the Council of Piqua in August of 1812, in preparation, John drew 10,000 rations. And in the military jargon, a ration is enough food for one person for one day. So he was anticipating feeding a lot of people, but did he feed 10,000 Delaware over that winter? Probably not. But there were several hundred here, maybe up to close to 1,000. So it was a population that definitely existed here and would definitely caused a lot of consternation. Ooh, there's another big word.
That's 2 50-cent words now.
I've used up my.
You're past your quota.
I've used my quota today. It caused a lot of concern. So we've gone from the French fleur-de-lis, the red ensign, the Betsy Ross flag, and now the Star-Spangled Banner. So you start to see there's a lot of history right here, and I think we'll probably when we look at that flag. And of course, as they added states, now a new flag wasn't created every time they added states. They waited for a while, and they hadn't really solidified the flag code yet. So you start to see several different versions of the American flag during this time. But we'll got one more we want to talk about, and so we'll touch on the flag, the 34-star flag from the Civil War era. Okay, fifth flag over Piqua. The flag here we see, this is the 34-star flag, and this is the flag that is associated with the Civil War. And this would have very directly flown over this place as well, because in August of 1862, this became Camp Piqua. A lot of people don't really realize that we do have a real Civil War connection here, because in 1862, the 94th and 110th Ohio Volunteer Units were both mustered into service here, both trained here. And there's some diaries out there that talk about the events here. One of the things that we know when they came into camp, they didn't have guns. So they trained, as they're doing the training, they had no guns. They carried sticks, anything they could find to train. And they used the farmhouse at least as a hospital site. So there was real Civil War activity that took place on this site. One of the things we know that in the main hallway, during the Camp Piqua era, there was a young man who had decided he really didn't want to go off to war. So to solve that problem, he hung himself in the hallway.
Ooh.
Now, that solved the issue, but he really could have had an easier way to do that, not to go to war.
And that would be?
That would be knock out your front teeth. Because if you knock out your front teeth, you can't, just like that. You can't take the top off the cartridges you needed to load your gun. So you were unfit for military service. So his solution was very permanent, and it did what he wanted it to do, but he really wouldn't needed to do what he did. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of things happen, so even during the Civil War era, this was a part of history. Now, by 1862, Johnston had passed away in February 1861. So he had passed away in Washington, but this was still a family property. John Henry Dearborn Johnston was managing the farm at that point in time. So, this made sense though, because this was a big space. They had place to put the camp. So you think about, all the military events that happened here in the 94th and 110th Ohio when they went into active service. One of the units went west and ultimately were part of Sherman's army, and the other went east and became a part of Grant's army. So, and if you drive by the monument, and it's amazing how many people I see stop up there on a fairly regular basis. If you look at the big monument, it lists the engagements that the 94th and 110th were in. And, those guys that came out of this place really were in the thick of the Civil War. They weren't on the side skirmishes. They were in the big battles. So people that had come from Piqua and this area into the Civil War really were in some of the major engagements during the war. So you start to see, you start with, the French militia visits to Ohio. You see the British presence. Then you start to see the American presence through here. This was a place that encompassed a lot of not just local history or Ohio history or American history. This really had some impacts on world history. So, and then when you couple that with the exhibit, the exhibit we have that traces Johnston's activities, you start to get an idea of, wow, there was a lot of stuff that happened on this place. So, I hope maybe we've piqued some interest today, maybe jarred some memories of, a lot of stuff has happened here. And I hope people start to, appreciate, the history that has taken place, right where we all live today. So, we've kind of gone around the farm without moving very far, and we'll finish things up now and get ready for our next excursion around the farm. Well,
looks like we've been around the farm pretty well.
We've been around the farm, and we moved maybe 30 feet.
That's true.
But we covered over 100 years of history too. So I hope people kind of like this a little bit, something a little bit different. We haven't talked about, some of the associated events. You hear a lot about Johnston and his agency period, the agriculture and the canal and that sort of thing. But I just kind of bring in some a little bit broader history today. So.
Yeah, I think that's probably the big thing that always amazes me is what all this place experienced and where it's set in the whole historical record there. I mean, it's a pretty amazing place.
It is, and that's one of the comments that we hear a lot from our visitors when they come in is, gee, Minnie, a lot of stuff happened here, didn't it? So yes, a lot of stuff did happen here, and I think it helps people understand, how much influence, Piqua had on our history. So maybe we've helped a little bit today.
That's
maybe
true.
we'll eliminate the statement, "Ain't nothing ever happened here before."
That's true.
Talking about the flags, if anybody's really interested, because the flag history in America is really pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. We just happen to have a book that says the American flag, what you should know about it. And if they come out, want to find out more about the flags, we just happen to have this in our gift shop. So not only visit our site, but buy our books as well. But we do have some upcoming events.
Yes, that's true. Some good stuff's happening.
Good stuff is happening on August the 15th. That's a Saturday evening. We'll do our annual Evening on the Canal, where people get to come in, have a nice catered dinner in our new education center in the air conditioning.
Beautiful view.
Beautiful view, comfortable seating, good food.
Oh, excellent.
And we'll have some entertainment that night. I think maybe the Canal Rats might be back this year.
Really?
Yeah, there's been some rumor that the Canal Rats might return, at least for dinner. So if people don't know what the Canal Rats are, they just haven't lived until they've experienced the Canal Rats. But anyway, That's August 15th. That is a reservation event. So if anybody's interested, would like to be a part of that, we can accommodate 50 people very comfortably. So they need to give us a call at 773-2522. And we can take care of some reservations. And again, that's August 15th, so it seems like a long ways away, but you know what? It really isn't.
It's creeping up real quickly.
Yeah, it's coming in a hurry. So, and that's always a fun time because, you know, not only do we have dinner, but we get a canal boat ride on the whole canal, which is not normal. That usually doesn't happen. And twilight is an interesting time to be on the canal. You start to see shadows, and you start to get a little bit different perspective of what the canal would have been like in the evenings when people were traveling. So that's our next upcoming event. And then the last Saturday that we're open, we have our 5 for the Farm. We have the 5K with the we partner with the YMCA and Can't Stop Running and do a 5K. And the beauty of our 5K is it's all on grass. You know, and the runners like that a lot. They really appreciate that, and that's an opportunity to see the site up close and personal at ground level. And that'll be early morning, and also we do a fun run first, mainly for the younger ones. They do a 1 mile fun run. So, you know, still lots going on. Then first weekend in October, the first Saturday in October, we have our fall event. This year we're going to try to move it up so maybe the weather will cooperate. We've had some nasty weather in the past. So, you know, I think that's the 3rd, is the 3rd of October is our fall event. And of course then we'll talk more about our Christmas event as we get closer. So,
and you know what else is coming up here shortly? The big yellow troop carriers will be rolling in.
Yep, yeah, the yellow troop, and so you'll have to dust off your stories and talk about the Canaligators some more, and we'll have a good time. And again, you know, if you want to watch, you know, if you want to come out, if people want to come out and watch the kids, it's fun to see each school group. Each group is a little different interests, different things catch their imagination, and that's always fun to see. And you know, we've talked about our Miami exhibit this summer. A lot of people have spent some time in there and have really enjoyed that. So we're glad that the Miami Nation was willing to mount that exhibit for us this summer. So it's been a lot going on, a lot going on still. You know, yes, you're right. The yellow troop carriers will be here before we know it.
That time is really rolling up on us.
And you know, but again, that's a lot of fun as well.
Oh yeah, the kids are a good time.
You know, we have different, you know, each season it seems like something different is going on, and that kind of keeps us going too, because we have a lot of variety. So hope people have enjoyed our visit around the farm today.
I think so, and it looks like from the clock on the wall it's time to roll things up. But before we do that, we have to give credit to world famous videographer, producer, director, Chief Grip. Any other titles? Well, nothing we can say on the air.
Right, yeah. All around nice guy.
I nearly forgot that one.
And don't forget, humble as the day is long. Good old Joe Teach.
So with that, we'll wrap things up and see you next time on Around the Farm.